Good morning, and welcome to a special Sober.Coffee rebroadcast event. Over the next few weeks, we're going to revisit our most impactful conversations with the late Dr. John. John spent a lifetime connecting with people, sharing a compassionate view on the dis-ease of addiction in all its forms. His gentle approach provided a roadmap to sobriety for thousands and thousands of individuals, and we are honored to share the recordings he left behind for us. We hope that you enjoy the listen, embrace the lessons, and apply the learnings. Godspeed to you, and may John rest in eternal bliss.
Welcome to Sober.Coffee, a weekly coffee chat sharing experience, strength, and hope for anyone on the sober road to recovery. You can download Sober.Coffee weekly on all podcast platforms and check us out on Instagram at Sober.Coffee Podcast and on Twitter at Sober.Coffee Pod. To learn more about us and to help support these sessions, visit online at Sober.Coffee. Here are your hosts, two guys on their own path to recovery, Mike and Glenn. Let's join them at the coffee shop.
Glenn,
What's up, brother?
good morning,
How
good
you
morning,
doing,
man. You know what? I'm in a serious mood today.
You would call me G last time, and all
I know, that
all,
was some-
all I could keep thinking about was G-string. I'm like, damn.
That's a whole different
I couldn't-
podcast for a whole different audience.
I know, I couldn't get that out of my head.
Yeah.
So what's going on, man? Hey, I just heard maybe 2 words. I saw a snippet of something, 2 words.
Talk to me.
2 words I swore would never happen in my life.
What? And they were?
TikTok.
I know, right?
Dude, come on. What are we doing?
I know.
This is getting stupid.
We got to hit the next generation.
Ugh.
You know, it's amazing.
What, the 12-year-olds?
Yeah, well, you know
Maybe.
what? Let's
I
talk
really,
seriously
I
for
really
a second.
shouldn't joke about that.
No, you shouldn't, because
I mean, for me, I was 35 when this really kicked in, but
Yeah.
there's some.
You know, for
Right.
us, we're alcoholics, and drugs are part of my story, and absolutely a deep part of my story. But that's the drug of choice for the 12-year-old, the 14-year-old, the 16-year-old, and
TikTok?
TikTok and drugs. You know, I mean, they're more leaning towards, you know, pharmaceuticals or fentanyl than they are to alcohol. I'm no doctor. I preface. I'm no doctor, but
You know what? We
it's a
should bring
gateway.
one in at some point.
We really should. We really should. So I'm being rude. We do have a table for 3 this
I know.
morning.
Yes, we do.
Yeah,
the
and
doctor
I'm
is
just
back in
talking
the house.
all over him. Yeah.
The
So
doc is back.
John is back with us today. We're so grateful to have you, John.
Thanks,
Thanks for
John.
having-
Great to have you again, man.
Yeah,
Thanks
if
for having
you-
me.
Unbelievable.
If you haven't heard it, go back to, and I don't know what order we're going to drop these in, but go back and listen to the other. We'll have a couple of John episodes. Please listen to it. There were so many nuggets in there.
Wait, what's the title of that first one? I'm fucked. Now what?
Yeah, I will probably clean that up for social media.
Well, we'll put some stars in
Yeah,
there.
some stars and
right?
asterisks and ampersands.
So that social media
I
doesn't clean us out.
I told my daughter the other day, I was describing something to her. I said, okay, it's the password is boom, 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 ampersand. She goes, oh, say what? I'm like, do you even know what a phone book is? Anyway, they don't know ampersands for anything. But, you know, John is back with us today. And if you get a chance, go back and listen. There were so many fantastic nuggets of information there. You just got to kind of reread it. I'm a note taker. I came in, and it's funny because when I came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I came in and I was so beaten up. I was, as Glenn likes to say, willing to do anything anyone told me to get better or to get well. And I was like a student, man. I would just take
I know
notes
you
and notes
came in
and
with that
notes and
journal
notes.
book, and you would just like take all the
And I
notes.
looked around the table and like, I'm the only one doing that. Why am I the only one doing this? But no one corrected me, so I just kept doing it. I'm like, okay, but there was so many nuggets of information that I wrote down, and that's what I felt about that first episode that we did with John. There's just so much good stuff. But I want to say before we kick off that behind the counter, you know, we're talking about the podcast, and we're talking about the universe of people that are hurting, that need help. And I got to tell you, John, your passion for the newcomer just came oozing out to me. You know, and again, not that you don't have passion for the guy who's still struggling after 4 years of sobriety with certain character defects, etc. But your passion for the newcomer is just, it just oozes out of you. It just, and I'm going to shut up in a minute here, but
Are you?
I don't know. You're the funny one. But the thing is that there is this time period where you really need something. And John, you were there for me, and I just thank you for being there for me. I'll never forget it. And so what are we going to talk about today, Glenn? I think I had a topic in mind I'd love to talk about. But what do you think?
Go ahead and lay it out. I mean, I got
right.
17 topics, but I mean, we have nothing prepared like we rarely do. So let's just
rarely. So
love that word, rarely.
One of the things that I learned in the rooms and a lot from Dr. John is this concept that really hit home to me because as I got better, I thought, okay, well, I'm better now. So I had alcohol. I'm no longer an alcoholic. I'm good. And John really opened up and talked about the fact that it's alcoholism, not alcoholism. Can you expound on that a little bit, Dr. John?
Sure, I'll try. At the last episode, we talked about what are you really powerless over? And I can't emphasize enough, in my opinion, that believing, never mind about thinking and theorizing and talking, but believing in your gut that you're screwed, that you're powerless, is essential. If I didn't believe that I'm powerless, that I'm sick, that I can't make myself well, I'm not going to thoroughly follow the path. Now the question is, what is it I'm powerless over? Powerless over alcohol is the admission ticket. And you'll notice the word alcohol shows up only once in the 12 steps. It's the admission ticket, and bad behavior, character defects is not really what I'm powerless over. I'm powerless over my alcoholism. What do I mean by that? Now, I don't have a scientific explanation. I can only share with you metaphors that I've picked up over the years, and none of these are original. Well, maybe I made up a few of them, but I pretty much stole them at meetings. And the first way I was born scared. Okay, when I first started to try to convey in words what I meant by the ism of alcoholism, and by the way, I think the ism is the core issue that underlies any addiction, regardless of the object of addiction, whether it's alcoholism or sexaholism or foodaholism or whatever the object of addiction. I think the ism is the core issue. What is this ism? I don't think it's a chemical imbalance in the brain. If it was, I'd go see my good friend Dr. Hillenbrand and get some medications, and I don't think it's stupidity. I think I was born scared of what? I don't know, everything and nothing, okay? It's a hole in the soul. That doesn't explain anything, but I have this void. I have this yearning for wholeness, a yearning for connectedness, a thirst for God. I had the great privilege of having several talks with Father Martin many years ago in the early 80s. And you may not remember him, but he was a Catholic priest, very charismatic, world-renowned speaker.
Does he have a podcast?
He might have. Okay. He used to do the chalk talk. All the rehab centers used to do his chalk talk. Anyway, he's long gone now, but he was giving a talk down in Atlanta at a medical-sponsored addictions convention, and he was the keynote speaker. And I think he kind of sold out because he's up there talking about psychodynamics and the unconscious and the brain chemistry.
Wow.
And I'm looking around, and all these people are nodding their heads and I'm thinking, that doesn't make sense. So I grabbed them during a break, and I said, Father Martin, I said, what am I not getting here? I said, it's not a disease in the usual sense. It's not a psychiatrical. And he looked around like nobody's watching, and he said, John, he says, I don't know. And then I listened, because when people think they know, they've stopped learning. But when this well-respected man who had 30 years of recovery, he was a Catholic priest with 30 years of program, said, I don't know. He says, I think the common denominator, I think the core issue is a thirst for God. He said, if there's anything that alcoholics thirst for more than alcohol, they thirst for God. And I thought, yeah. Now, I went down there as a shrink looking for answers that I could use in my practice. I thought, how am I going to sell that and charge people money? People come in and say, you have a thirst for God, pay me, But I think that's, again, it's a metaphor perhaps, a hole in the soul, a thirst for God, a yearning for wholeness, a yearning for connectedness, a spiritual hunger. I think it is a disease, but I think it's a spiritual dis-ease.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because in all the time that we've spent in meetings together, that sounded like a spiritual pitch, but that wasn't a spiritual pitch. What you're suggesting is that there is this hole in the soul, this void that needs to be filled, And I've heard you say before, it's kind of God poking at you. But again, you're not, you never launch into these spiritual. So I kind of picked that up there, but it's not that. It's this void that you're talking about.
Go ahead. Look.
Yeah, no, I'll just, in fact, over many years, when we start talking about spirituality, there's not a time when I hear the word spiritual or somebody's being spiritual where I don't remember what you or recall what you said when you say, hey, when somebody says they're spiritual, grab your wallet, grab your genitals, and run out of the room.
Yep. All right.
Right? Because there's a lot of that. But I relate back to a couple of the key things you said, the spiritual dis-ease, the born scared, because I've been to so many rehabs and talked to so many doctors, and I've been to pill throwers, and they all want to go to your childhood, right? Something screwed up in your childhood. In fact, one doctor even said, that I was adopted, and well, I'm sorry, but there was one doctor who actually said, I think you had a crystallization within the womb, and that caused your fragileness, which makes you drink. And
wow.
And I'm like, wow, that's what I said. I'm like, wow. But I think to give you a term that I relate to, that I live off of, when I was growing up, I grew up in a Christian household, and I think some of it was wacky. And the way I look back, 80% of that I don't even subscribe to, because I think that there's a better way of looking at it. It's not about the rules; it's about a relationship with your higher power. But I think I was born with what I refer to today as true north, where I just know inside my soul what is the right direction for my path, the right way to live. And throughout my life, whether it was ego, whether it was chasing money, chasing, I never had fame, but chasing notoriety, whatever word you want to use.
You were in the police blotter.
No, I wasn't. Never.
Oh, wow.
Never.
Okay.
Maybe once. But I got away from that true north, and maybe even parts of my life I was direct 180 from true north. And what I have noticed over time, this has taken me time. This is not one of these, I'm on my knees in rehab and I get this bolt of lightning and I walk out and I'm perfect. I don't believe, if that happens to somebody, that's great, but I'm on the slow train. But over time, I have found at least the zone of that true north again, right? And where I feel comfortable in the zone or the direction that I'm heading. I don't know if I'm even making sense, but I can really start to understand over time. I understand that dis-ease, and even today when I go through my day, I can tell when I have the dis-ease. When I'm off. Where my soul's off or whatever.
Right, and it has nothing to do with alcohol. You said.
Go ahead. Can I get one of my dog stories in?
Yeah. Oh, please.
I'll try to be as brief as I can. I think that ultimately the ism of alcoholism is the human condition in capital letters. What I mean by that is I think we humans are the only species that have the capacity to self-reflect, to be consciously aware of our mortality, to yearn for spiritual things, to regret the past, to fear the future. And let me share with you how I came to that. I was about 5 years sober, real quick. 5 years sober, doing pretty well, I thought. I remember a January snowy afternoon. I'm watching a Bears game. Ditka was the coach. The Bears were actually winning. It was a good day. Wife and I were getting along well. My three little boys were ice skating on the pond. I'm feeling about
Norman Rockwell.
I was just going to say Norman Rockwell Sunday afternoon.
Exactly. I'm feeling about as good as I've ever felt. I look at my beagle, Kate, laying on the floor next to me. Now, you got to be a dog lover to appreciate this. Usually when I look at my dog, I get a warm, gushy feeling. And this particular day, I look at her, and I get kind of a twinge of jealousy or resentment, a negative emotion. What is that about? And I start thinking, because I have to analyze everything. And I look at her, and she's laying her on her back, yawning, stretching, smile on her face, licking her butt. And I'm thinking, I'm feeling about as good as I've ever felt, but I don't feel anywhere near as centered, as at peace, as at ease as this freaking dog. Now I got to figure this out. I'm thinking, I had a good steak dinner. She had Alpo. I'm married to a lovely woman. She's been spayed, the dog, not the wife. Okay? I've got a few bucks in the bank. She can't even go pee unless I let her out. If anybody should feel content and secure and serene, and it should be me. And then the light bulb goes on. She is not cursed by the human condition. She has no ism. She has no conscious awareness of self. And is that a little head trippy? Yeah, I guess.
No,
but
not at all.
maybe we just stick with soul hunger or holding the soul. And as Glenn touched, like so many people, I try to fill that void with false gods. I wasn't aware of it. But since as far back as I can remember, even before I discovered booze, I've done everything alcoholically. I excelled in school. I hated school, and I'm not very smart. I'm an only child of immigrant parents. My mom and dad had 4 years of formal education. And I think the ism does express itself as shaped to some extent by the environment. Okay, I think that if I was born in the ghetto, I'd probably be the chief gangbanger. Driven. Okay, and in hindsight, I can see that. I was the smallest shrimp on my swim team. I was the only guy to place in state. I was captain. And I'm not bragging. But everything was fear-driven. False gods, fill the void. The prettiest girl, that'll do it. More A's, another scholarship. More, better, more. And as a result, I got pretty good at stuff.
Yeah.
I developed some coping skills. And what do they call those in AA?
Character defects.
Damn, isn't it so?
Caught. That's awesome.
I've told you the story of the man if I'm getting too long-winded, cut me off. I had the good fortune of 12-stepping a man early in recovery. And I was just getting on fire with this stuff. And, oh, my God, this isn't about booze. This is about, the alcoholism. And a man came to me. Turned out he was a psychiatrist, 62 years old. I don't know why I remember that. I thought he was very old. And long story short, he'd been to therapist, a Mayo Clinic, complaining of depression, anxiety, taking all kinds of pills. And somehow he wound up in my office. And without going into great detail, I decided this man is a high-functioning alcoholic. And because he had tried everything else, he reluctantly, skeptically gave AA a chance. In fact, I bribed him. I said, go to AA. If it doesn't help you, come back and I'll treat you free. He was impressed by that. He went to AA for a few months, X number of meetings. He came back and he said, he says, you're right. This is what I need. These are my people. But one thing confuses me. He said, I'm 62 years old, and I never had any character defects till I got to AA.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And he was making a very astute observation. A lot of the character defects are the world calls coping skills, right? There's survival value in being cutthroat, being secretive, being manipulative. I won a lot of battles before I came to AA. I could never win the war.
Yeah. I remember being in a meeting. You may or may not have been there. Glenn probably wasn't. He was probably golfing. But I said out loud, and I didn't realize what I was saying until somebody came and said, wow. And it was, I just said, I was an alcoholic long before I took the first sip of alcohol.
Yep.
And it was like as I said it was cathartic. It was like an epiphany to me. That's right. The baby comes out crying. The baby doesn't come out laughing.
I'm convinced at the point of conception, God looked down and said, let's leave some of the insulation out on this guy and make him a thin-skinned person and send him through a thick-skinned world.
I love that.
We're pain augmenters. And I don't have the time. I'll tell you guys about a study at some point that we alcoholics are pain augmenters even before we meet alcohol. They did a study where kids that had the alcoholic gene who later became active alcoholics, you expose them to noxious stimuli, whether it's physical, like a pinch, or an insult. The normal kids, the control group, would say, ouch, or, oh, you hurt my feelings. The alcoholic kids would go, ow, and they'd sob.
Right.
Yeah, hypersensitive.
Yeah. Can I hit your hot button?
What does that mean?
I got a question for you.
Sure.
It's an allergy, John. Talk to me about the allergy.
Well, I don't want to offend, big book thumpers. I think the big book is an amazing book, way ahead of its time. It's our Bible. But I don't take every word literally, and, I'm a Catholic, so I squat about the Bible. I mean, you're much better versed than I am, but people who take the Bible literally make me a little nervous, I think there's a lot of truth and wisdom in there, but it's metaphorical. And like man with the big book, I know the big book says, the doctor's opinion, that it's an obsession of the mind and an allergy of the body. My feeling is if you have an allergy, take some Benadryl or go see an allergist. Obsession, I obsess about lots of things. I obsess about my ingrown toenail. I obsess about, it's an attempt to make it a disease, but that's not, so far as I know, I could be wrong, I think there is no evidence, scientific evidence, factual evidence, that we alcoholics are neurophysiologically, neurochemically, or physiologically any different from other people. I think we metabolize alcohol the same way. When I drink too much, alcohol does to me what it does to anybody. Okay? it inhibits my inhibitions and I act badly. Okay, it inhibits the part of the brain that makes me different from a dog. The frontal lobe, which says, no, you don't screw your neighbor's wife, you don't take your clothes off at a party, that gets inhibited. Okay, it does that to everybody. That's why normies get drunk, act badly, but then they don't do it again. Okay, because we're different, in my opinion, that it does something for us.
Right.
It soothes that ism. It gives us relief from ourselves. So I know I go off on these long-winded tangents.
You know, and the reason I brought it up is because that'll, like you said, you take Benadryl. If I eat raw, if I eat shellfish and I blow up, first of all, I take Benadryl. Secondly, I don't eat shellfish again.
Right.
You know, but and so I guess I brought it up because I don't want people to get hung up on the word of allergy, because it's the concept that me as an alcoholic, once I have that first sip, it's all bets are off. That's just the way that,
because of what it does for you.
Because of what it
I don't
does
have
for
an allergy. I have an affinity for alcohol.
Right.
Craving is not a symptom of allergy. Craving is a symptom of an affinity.
Right. I didn't crave to be swollen up by the shellfish.
Right. Now, to be honest with you, I don't know why alcohol soothes my ism better than anything. And for some people, food
Could be Amazon.
soothes their ism. And for some people, gambling soothes the ism. I don't know why that is. Gambling does nothing for me.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Nothing for me either.
Right.
I mean, booze for me, and it's funny, I just went through shoulder surgery, and I took, 2 weeks worth of, and I told my doctor, and my sponsor knew, and my wife watched my pills, and talked to my doctor and my sponsor, like, just because you're an alcoholic, you shouldn't have to go through, shoulder surgery is painful. Shouldn't have to do that. That shouldn't be a punishment for being an alcoholic. So I took 2 weeks of opioids.
In one day? I'm sorry. My bad.
That's
my
hilarious.
bad.
That's hilarious. But you know what? I don't have they do nothing for me.
Right.
But booze, it worked for a good period of time. It was a magic, and I was cool before I drank, but somehow it just really worked. And so my brain remembered all the good times that it worked. In fact, even now, and we've talked about this, but even now, it can be a boring Tuesday afternoon. I got 6 phone calls coming ahead of me, and I can remember the days where I had a solo cup full of vodka, and my brain today says, remember how great that was? Remember how smooth that afternoon went? Remember how good you were? And I probably wasn't good. I probably blew, but that's what my brain tells me today, that, hey, maybe it'll be different this time.
Yeah.
But that's why I keep coming back, because those thoughts have not gone away from me yet.
I think the memory of the painful consequences tend to fade over time.
Right.
Okay? Those are up here in my brain. Well, it wasn't that bad. And my wife's gone now, so she won't be upset. And if I lose a car, I can buy another one. But what it does for me, that memory is in my soul.
Sure.
Okay? I don't have to stop and think, why did I drink? And I'm as you know, I relapsed after 15 years.
Yeah.
Okay. And getting back to your original question, why do I get long-winded? Alcoholism versus alcoholism, okay? This hole in the soul, the spiritual dis-ease, whatever it is, it's important for me to realize that it's still there. I sometimes hear people talk in the program as if they were alcoholic, but they're not anymore, And that's the danger of the false assumption that alcohol is a problem. I drank, my life was shitty. I'm not drinking, my life is better. Hallelujah. And I'm like, I knew that before I came to AA. I didn't need AA to tell me that drinking was a bad idea. What I need AA for is that even when I don't drink and things get better, and I clean up my act, I still have this hole in the soul. I still yearn. I'm still hungry. That's why I need to continue to work the program.
I love it, John.
And to underline that, 90% of the people don't come back, right? Or they try for a while. And everybody, I talked to a guy last night who, is now back, right? And he drank yesterday, and I had an hour painful conversation with him. And just like everybody that comes back, what happened? Well, I stopped coming to meetings. I stopped working the program. I stopped staying connected. I started, blah, blah. And that's why I just wrote down, keep working. That's why I do this stuff every single day, because I have enough proof from watching other people, that if you pull back, it's going to come back.
Right.
It boils down to this. I know for me, and I think it's true. I think it's true for any alcoholic. I have 3 ways to go: drunk, dry, and sober. I can do drunk by myself. And if it wasn't for the painful consequences, I'd still be doing it. I can do dry by myself. I don't know about you, but for me, dry becomes so unbearable in time.
I'd rather drink.
That I'd rather drink.
Yep.
I cannot do. I never knew there's a third choice. For 20 years, I bounced between drunk, dry, drunk, dry, drunk, dry, and I had enough pain to finally get my butt into AA. Had enough pain to stick around a while because I didn't catch on right away. It took a while. I realized there's a third option called sober, and maybe we'll get into it in the next session. What's sober? What's sober?
Will you come back and talk about that?
Sure.
John, this has been great, man.
Thanks,
Thank
Doc.
you so much.
It's always great to have a visit with the doc.
That's right.
Thanks
Thank you.
for
Thank
having me.
you very
Thanks for
much.
having me, guys.
See you, brother.
It's been
Amen.
fun.
Thanks for joining us for today's coffee chat. To contact the show, email us at podcast@Sober.Coffee. If you need immediate help, the AA hotline is 800-839-1686. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 800-273-8255. Remember, Mike and Glenn are sharing their own journey on the path to recovery. Any suggestions, medical or otherwise, are their own experiences and should not be viewed as professional advice. See you next week, and remember, there is a solution.
Stay safe in the city of Chicago.